I had two gaming consoles when I was a kid. My dad's NES, which barely worked unless you scrubbed it down with rubbing alcohol, and the family Windows 95 computer. I played a lot of educational games on that old computer, like the Clue Finders and Knowledge Adventure games, but I also played games like Star Wars Rebel Assault 2, which won't run on my laptop, like Star Wars TIE Fighter, which won't run on my laptop, and a game of which I have many memories, a port of an arcade game called Cyber Troopers Virtual On, and since Virtual On will run on my laptop, I'm going to pop it in and enjoy some nostalgia. Cyber Troopers Virtual On is a fighting game where the characters are giant robots. Unlike pretty much every other fighting game that has ever existed, Virtual On is played from a third-person perspective. You can move in any direction that you want, and the stages are fairly big, which immediately sets the game apart from every other arcade and fighting game that I've ever seen. The game has 8 playable characters, and the character names are friggin' weird. The characters' names are Temjin, Dorcas, Fei Yen, Belgdor, Viper 2, Bal-Bas-Bow, Farmid, and Raiden. One of the things that I really like about this game is that all of the characters feel unique. Fei Yen and Viper 2 are really fast, yet they have very different attacks from one another. Raiden and Dorcas are strong but slow. Belgdor has a lot of good long-range attacks, and Farmed specializes in close-range attacks. There's such a big difference between the fighters that playing as each individual character feels like a unique experience, as opposed to some other fighters, cough, Mortal Kombat, cough, where all of the fighters feel mostly identical and have only minor differences between them. Each character has 3 weapons that they can use, along with a jetpack that can be used to jump high into the air or quickly dash across the field. What's really cool is that each weapon behaves differently if you use it while dashing or jumping. Firing a weapon while dashing will fire projectiles in a wide area, and firing while jumping will fire multiple quick blasts at the enemy. However, even though firing a weapon while moving lets you get off multiple shots at once, firing while standing still is typically much more accurate. What really set Virtual On apart from its arcade counterparts was its control scheme. The game was played using 2 joysticks, each of which had 2 buttons. One joystick moved your character while the other turned, the triggers fired weapons, and the top buttons dashed and jumped. It was simple, elegant, and completely different from any other arcade game that had come before or ever since. I really can't stress enough how fun the game is to play with its simple and intuitive control scheme, as opposed to some fighters, cough Mortal Kombat, cough Tekken, cough Street Fighter, cough, where you can't do jack crap without entering a 6-button combination while moving the control stick in a quarter of a counterclockwise circle and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance while standing on your head. Since the game is played from a third-person perspective in a 3D environment, an enemy can come at you from pretty much any direction. Thankfully, the game realizes that aiming at enemies in a 3D environment is problematic in a fast-paced fighting game, so the game aims weapons for you if your opponent is in your field of vision. Also, to keep you from having to frantically turn every time that you need to face an enemy and wasting valuable time, the game will automatically turn to face your enemy if you dash or jump when fire your weapon. The game's combat is beautifully streamlined, which allows you to play the game without getting frustrated over its controls. The game also has a story, of course. Basically, the story boils down to people found the ruins of a technologically advanced civilization on the moon. They used that technology to make giant robots, and now a robot on the moon is trying to destroy the Earth with a weapon called the solar gun. The company making the Virtuaroids doesn't have time to train and recruit pilots, so they make a rudimentary training program and release it to the public as an arcade video game. I'm so not even kidding about that. The game breaks the fourth wall by saying that the game is actually a top-secret training program, and that if you beat it, you assume control of a Virtuaroid on the moon to try and stop the solar gun from destroying the Earth as we know it. So here's what went through my mind when I finally figured this out. Why hasn't anybody made a movie about this? Nobody ever thought that it might be cool to make a movie about ordinary people who play an arcade game unaware that the arcade game is a military training program and that once they beat it they get conscripted to pilot massive super advanced robots into battle to save the planet from an evil robot with its own army of evil robots? No, that movie doesn't get made. Instead we get freaking Battleship. But back to the game. The game is basically a tournament fighter against the game's 8 characters, followed by the final boss fight with a giant robot that the manual vaguely refers to as Mobile Arms. The game has a very definitive difficulty curve. The game starts out piss easy so that you can get the hang of the controls, but by the time that you get to the 4th or 5th fight, the game gets aggressively hard. Even if you put the game on easy difficulty, which you can do on the PC version, the game still gets downright murderous during the last few fights. But you know what? That's a good thing. I like how the game starts easy and then gets gradually harder until it becomes a real challenge. A steady learning and difficulty curve is another major thing that fighting games get wrong all the time. Now, even though I have quite a few memories of playing this game, not all of those memories are good. This game actually came packaged with my family's Windows 95 computer, but the game barely ran on that Windows 95 computer. It took about 2 minutes to load before every single fight, and when the fight started, I'd conservatively estimate that the game ran at, 1 frame per second, and to get the game to run that well, I had to turn the graphics to their lowest settings so that all of the Virtuaroids looked like the fighting polygon team from Super Smash Bros. Plus, the game would regularly stop to load for a few seconds during each fight, and it would stop to load for a few seconds every time that a player got hit. I just don't get it. This game came packaged with my Windows 95 computer, and the game barely worked on that computer. I'll bet you that it was some kind of plot by the computer store. They give you a game that doesn't work with your new computer so that you have to go back and buy tons of shit to upgrade your computer and play the game. No wonder I hate PC gaming. In a miraculous twist of fate, the game actually runs on my laptop at perfect speed and full graphics, but there's still one problem with the game that I've been unable to fix. The game crashes every time that I die. I never had this problem playing on my old computer, but every time I die, the game crashes. It doesn't crash at any other time. The really weird thing is that it doesn't crash if I'm playing as Fei Yen. I have absolutely no idea why this is. And this is why I'm using Fei Yen in most of this video, even though my favorite characters are Temujin and Viper 2. I like Temujin because he's the balanced out character. His main weapon is a beam sword that has a phenomenal close range attack and a wonderful and accurate long range attack. Yeah, Temujin's sword has a gun built inside its blade. All of you Final Fantasy VIII fans who cream yourselves over the gun blade, I've got news for you. Temujin did it first! Temujin can also throw grenades that have a good blast radius and make an excellent medium range attack. Temujin can kill you at any range, and he's got decent speed to boot. He's just dang good. I also like Viper 2 because she's super fast and she has a lot of excellent long-range attacks, which goes really well with the run-and-gun strategy that I typically use. The downside is that Viper 2 has a very weak hull, and if you get hit a few times, you die, which is kind of a problem since dying once causes the game to crash. Ask pretty much anybody who ever played this game, and about 90% of them will tell you that their favorite character is Fei Yen, and I think that I know why. No, it's not because she's designed like a Japanese schoolgirl. Okay, maybe that's partially why. Once Fei Yen loses half of her health, she enters hyper mode. Her body glows a golden color, and all of her attacks get supercharged. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that before. Actually, I've always wondered about that. Which came first, Dragon Ball Z's Super Saiyans or Super Sonic from the Sonic games? I'd like to get my facts straight so that I can tell exactly what this game is ripping off. On top of being really fast and having light armor, Fei Yen has 3 attacks. The hand beam is a basic attack that you can easily spam, the bowgun doesn't do crap unless you're at close range, and the heart beam, in hyper mode, is the most powerful attack in the game. Really all you have to do to win a fight as Fei Yen is wait until her hyper mode gets activated and then dash around the arena spamming the heart beam until you land a lucky shot and drain most of your opponent's health. And given how gamers usually are when they play fighting games competitively, that is to say, cheating bastards, I'd guess that this incredibly cheap tactic is the reason why everybody loves Fei Yen. If you manage to beat the first 5 levels of the game without dying, or without dying very often, the training program glitches up and you fight a new enemy called Jaguarundi. When I was a kid, I read about Jaguarundi in the game's manual, and I was mystified because I died so much while playing the game that I never even got close to seeing him. Now that I'm older and more experienced with the game, I see Jaguarundi pretty much every time that I play the game, so he's kind of lost his air of mysteriousness. Jaguarundi has 3 different attacks that all fire multiple projectiles in multiple directions at once, and all of his attacks kill you in 2 hits. And the game crashes on my PC whenever I die. Do you see the problem? The game takes pity on you if Jaguarundi kills you, and he gets significantly weaker each time you die, until you can kill him with pretty much 1 punch. I guess they kind of had to do that, otherwise that neat Easter egg prevents you from beating the game, but it's still kind of patronizing. Oh, you couldn't beat me in 1 shot? Well here, let me tie one of my hands behind my back. Maybe now you'll do better, hey buddy? And sadly, no, you cannot play as Jaguarundi. This game kind of came out before all fighting games were required by law to have loads of unlockables. After you beat all 8 Virtuaroids, you finally fight Mobile Arms, and you find out that his real name is Z-Gradt. I'm sorry, I can't help but call him Mobile Arms. When I played this game as a kid, I could never get to the final boss, and until I saw him for myself, he was just this mysterious monolith that the manual had dubbed Mobile Arms. So that's what I always called him. And frankly, I think that Mobile Arms is a much better name. Mobile Arms is vague, foreboding, and sinister, because the term quite literally means moving weapon. Z-Gradt just sounds dumb. It's kind of like the whole Robotnik versus Eggman thing. You grew up calling him one thing, and that's what you call him all the time. And I'm sure I'm going to get some comments disagreeing with me on that. Anyway, Mobile Arms has 4 main weapons. Ring lasers that are easy to dodge, really quick firing lasers that aren't as easy to dodge, floating mines that he deploys 5 at a time, and the solar gun which kills you in 1 hit. This boss is kind of tricky because your weapons barely scratch Mobile Arms' paint job unless you attack him while he's firing the solar gun, forcing you to get up close to the face-melting laser. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Oh, and if you were thinking that you could just jump over the giant face-melting laser, don't. Just don't. But after a tough battle, Mobile Arms collapses in defeat, and you get treated to one of the most epic endings to a video game that I've ever seen. Your Virtuaroid turns to face the solar gun, charges up all of its power, and fires one huge shot into the cannon's core, causing the entire base to explode. As the credits roll, the camera slowly pans around the moon to overlook the planet Earth, now safe thanks to your efforts. And the last thing that you see before the credits close out are the destroyed remains of your Virtuaroid drifting through space, a grim and haunting reminder that there is always a steep price to war. That is, unless you're playing as Fei Yen, in which case she floats back to Earth in a protective little bubble completely unharmed. That entitled little bitch gets everything. Cyber Troopers Virtual Lawn is a magnificent game. The gameplay is fast-paced and unique from any other game that I've ever played. All of the characters are unique, the controls are fluent and responsive, and the game is challenging but not difficult to the point of madness. This game just gets everything right that a fighting game should get right. Everything about this game works great. The only real complaint that I have is that trying to get the game to run properly is a pain in the ass, but once you get it working, it's glorious. The game is probably hard to find these days, especially the arcade machine, but if you can find it, I absolutely recommend playing it. This game has earned its place in history because it is awesome. It's an all-time classic and it's just great.
I'm a fire in my laser!